you following the same type of accreditation guidelines as agencies throughout our nation?
I assume that we do, yes. Yeah.
You assume. Then you would agree that supervisory personnel are accountable for those people and the performance of the people underneath them, correct?
Yeah, that as a general rule, sure, yes.
I take issue with you saying that we're trying to make political points with Officer Terry's death. To me, it's personal.
From my cold, dead hands.
When we talk about the Second Amendment, I want to read it to you. And by the way, you don't have to because you were all so generous. There are constitutions in the back. You can carry it around yourself, where it says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's not that tough, right? I mean, this is where we have the right to keep and bear arms to protect ourselves from our government, as well as from foreign invaders and challenges. And this is going to be another ongoing battle. God knows we see it here in Florida. We've been living it for the last several weeks and months. And I can go on for quite some time on the Second Amendment, but I'd rather bring up somebody who knows it even better than I do. Congresswoman Sandy Adams is a wife and a mother. She has a degree in criminal justice administration from Columbia College. She spent 17 years as a deputy in the Orange County Sheriff's Office. She was elected to the Florida House of Representatives in 2002, where she served extraordinarily well, and then elected to the United States Congress in 2010, where she currently represents Florida's 24th District. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Sandy Adams.
Second Amendment. Wow, you know, a lot of people, what's a girl know about the Second Amendment? Well, I know a few things about the Second Amendment. I know that it allows me the right to keep and bear arms. And I hear about it all the time from people within the district because they keep hearing all the different things that are being filed and issues being forced through the email system where we may be considering to do something that would take away those rights. I brought my iPad out because, as many of you, you've got these little things that go around and they can easily be carried. But what I found interesting was that when the Second Amendment was first placed, there was a lot of questions about if it was the right for an individual to bear arms, or was it really the right of a militia to bear arms? And in 2008 and 2010, our Supreme Court actually issued 2 Second Amendment declarations and decisions. And they ruled the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess a firearm unconnected to service in a militia. Now, why is that important? Because if you listen to some of my colleagues, they believe it should be only within a militia. I don't believe so. I believe that our founding fathers were very clear. And I think Tico read it very well. But it was interesting when you start reading all about this one little amendment that stands for so much. When I was in the State House, I remember that the media had taken issue with people who had concealed weapons permits. And they were starting to publish on the internet, in the newspapers, people's home addresses that had a concealed weapons permit. And I thought, you know, that's a little bit of an invasion of privacy. If people want to enjoy their Second Amendment rights, and they go through the process of getting that permit, that should not make them the ear of the media or anybody else, and it shouldn't put them at risk for being a target of a criminal activity, because guess what? If I know that you've got a CWP, chances are you probably have a gun. So that might be the house I want to stop in and visit while you're not home. So while I was in the State House, I filed a little bill, and it was House Bill 687 in 2006, and it said, your information is no longer going to be available for the media to publish. It says that's your information. They can have the number. That's all they need. If they need to know how many people have CWPs, They can have the number. They don't need your name, your address, and all the information so that they can post it on the website. That was an interesting battle, and it was one I didn't really think would happen. But it does happen time and time and time again. You know, I just sat through a lot of hearings on HR 822, and it was so that if you have a concealed weapons permit and another state has a concealed weapons permit, you should be able to travel back and forth. We had a lot of discussion in the committee, as we often do in our Judiciary Committee, but it was interesting to hear the logic behind not wanting that to happen. It just amazes me that every step of the way you hear about the different defining things about different amendments, or maybe the interpretation is a little differently, or maybe they didn't really mean that anyways when they wrote that. I mean, it was a long time ago. No, they meant it. And it was, again, a decision in Columbia versus Heller. The court ruled the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm, unconnected to a service in a militia, and to use that firearm for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. Wow. That's what it's all about. I hear all the time, guns kill people. Well, I can tell you, people hurt people. It is the people that shouldn't maybe have those firearms because of their intent, but it's not the firearm. You know, earlier today I was talking to our law enforcement officers in the back, asking them what they're carrying, because I used to carry a Beretta. They were switching to the Glock, and I wanted to keep my Beretta when I left the agency because I had had it a long time. But it is a weapon, and we need to respect that. But it is still our right as Americans, given to us by our Father in heaven. We have rights. It's our inalienable right to protect ourselves. And it's also listed in our Constitution in the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights. I gave you a Supreme Court ruling. But as you know, another court ruling could change that. And that's why it's so important when we look at who we put in position that can appoint those justices. Are they someone who follows the Constitution, who believes in our Bill of Rights, who will appoint people that believe in those same things? Because if they're not, we're one justice away of maybe a different ruling. And to me, that is frightening. We need to make sure that we elect people who do understand, who will follow the Constitution, who will listen to the people. It's interesting because when I was researching the Second Amendment and how it came about, you start listening and you look at all the iterations. And one of the articles said, well, Congress passed one Second Amendment, and it was different than the original Second Amendment, or it was different than the amendment that was ratified, the language, the wording, by the states. But at the end of the day, it still remained our right to own and possess firearms. And that has stayed with us for all these years. We have a lot to do in Washington, D.C. I agree with Senator Lemieux. It is broken. It is something that if I hadn't seen it from the inside, probably wouldn't have believed it was that bad. But it is that bad. You've got people on both sides of the aisle that have been there for a very long time. You get them celebrating their something 100,000th vote, and you wonder, what? The only way you're going to have a difference in how Washington works if you change who is in Washington. And that's just a reality. And that starts right at the administration level. The President of the United States, the Senate, and the House hold everyone accountable. I look at the actions taken by Eric Holder in our committee. When I questioned him that day, and by the way, we only get 5 minutes to ask questions in a committee hearing. I'm amazed at that, but that's our rule, so we get 5 minutes. 5 minutes to ask him what took place. How did this get so bad? How is it that you would enter into a operation such as this, your agency, your people, where you would let loads and loads and loads of very high-power firearms walk? And by walk, I mean just let them go. How is that possible? I'm a law enforcement officer. We would never have allowed that to happen. And in the process, we lost an officer because those guns were used to kill him. And then, while we're holding the hearing, we get a report that the agency, his agency, Mr. Holder's agency, had sent out an email, and one of the local news organizations had gotten a copy of it, and it said, now we can use this to do gun control on the border. No, that's not what you do. You don't let the guns walk, have one of our officers killed by them, and then try to use it to say, we'll just use this as a reason why we'll do gun control on the borders. This will justify it. Wrong answer. I, along with a lot of the members of our Judiciary Committee, want to hold this agency and Mr. Holder accountable, one, for the loss of lives created by this operation and the operation itself. And we will not stand by and let them use this as a way to circumvent our Second Amendment rights so that they can then implement gun control. That's wrong. So as we all look at everything that's been happening here today, and you've heard it from almost everyone that's been up here, in one way or another, they've let you know. We said last election cycle it was the most important election of our lifetime, and it was. Because if you hadn't sent 87 freshmen to Washington, D.C., imagine how much further in debt we would be right now. Just imagine that. Because it was our voices, your voices, that said, oh no, we made it a commitment to the people that sent us here. It's time to stop the spending. It's time to start curving. It's time to rein back. Well, now, it's time that we finish what we started. This election will be the defining moment of where we go from here. Will we stick with our Constitution? Will we follow what it says? Or will we allow an administration who ignores a lot of the time the Constitution, that signs a lot of executive orders, creates a lot of regulations to dictate to us how we will and will not live our lives? That's the question we have with this election. But I will tell you that I will continue to fight for your right to keep and bear arms, because that's what our Constitution says. And I want to thank you all for being here and being involved. And stay involved, please. We need all of you to stay involved. Thank you.